Now, nursing union DENOSA has come out in defense of its members in the Northwest. A shortage of cribs and incubators at the Mahikeng Hospital has resulted in babies being put on cardboard boxes. The union says the Department of Health should not blame its members, but rather the lack of resources. So to discuss this further now, I'm joined by DENOSA provincial chairperson Mzwakhe Seleke, who joins me this morning. And Mzwakhe, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. I suppose let's start with that lack of resources that you mentioned has contributed to this incident we're reporting on right now. Newborn babies being placed in cardboard boxes and not necessarily in incubators. What exactly is happening in the hospital out in Mahikeng?
Good morning to your viewers and to yourself, Tumelo. What I can report is that the situation in that ward is not as honky-dory as the minister is claiming. In my view, there is a lot of issues that the nurses are going through in that ward. Let me put things into perspective by saying that ward is a 25-bedded ward, and on top of that, on that day, they had 56 babies admitted in that ward. Now, this shows you the overcrowding and the overflow of patients that was there on that day. On top of a 25-bedded ward, we had only 7 nurses nursing those babies in that day. Now, to me, the nursing service manager reported to the CEO, reported to the relevant people. For instance, she looked for help in other institutions, according to the report that we have. And thus we are saying the nursing department or the nurses in that institution should not be the only ones who are blamed. What we know also is that in previous meetings in the same institution, there was discussions around increasing or procuring more cribs and more incubators. Now, how can that be poor management? It is clear that nurses are being targeted on this regard, because it is our view that no normal thinking nurse can put a baby in a box, whereas there's an alternative crib or alternative incubator around. It shows you that they did not have any other choice to do that. In our training as nurses, all we are taught is to save life. The other part that is very funny for us is that the doctors are the ones who admit patients. Now, it is my view that the clinical manager, when the overcrowding started, should have been involved and should have been informed. Now, what did the clinical manager do? Except to continue to advise their doctor today, his doctors, that they must continue to admit and admit and admit and admit. At the end of the day, the only people that are taking responsibility here are nurses, which is completely unfair and completely wrong.
And we understand that with that being said, Mzwakhe, the nursing manager at the Mahikeng Hospital has since now been suspended. Now, one is assuming that either this is pending an ongoing investigation or the investigation has been conducted or is being conducted. Now, in terms of communication with the Department of Health, Mzwakhe, please just update me here if you can. What has been the communication been like between the hospital as well as the Department of Health in terms of the shortage of incubators, the lack of resources, the conditions with which nurses find themselves in? What has that communication been like and the response been like from the department? Mzwakhe, are you with me? Oh, we seem to have lost DENOSA as a provincial chairperson, Mzwakhe Seleke. An important conversation to have, but definitely understand the provincial, secretary there mentioning just in terms of their members believing that they have been targeted with regards to the suspension by nurses. The provincial chairperson, Mzwakhe Seleke. Let me try you once again and see if you're with me. Mzwakhe Seleke, are you still with me to continue with our conversation? Oh, I definitely seem to have lost him. Let me try one more time. My team telling me he might have muted. Mzwakhe, if you've muted, just check if you have not muted your audio, this conversation being forward. Are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Thanks,
Mzwakhe. Can you just repeat the question?
Absolutely. So I was just asking in terms of, the communication between the hospital and the Department of Health, because now we have a nursing manager who has been suspended, and you are saying that obviously what occurred does not go with what you have been trained to do as nurses. This is nothing more but nurses being targeted, your members being targeted, because you say there's a lack of resources that the Department of Health is aware of at Mahikeng Hospital. But what's that communication been like, and the response from the department in solving that issue around resources in the hospital?
Well, my view is that the hospital itself reported a few weeks ago that they are in process of procuring those beds. It would then mean that they were having something in situ. Now, what we know generally from the provincial office of the Department of Health is that they are crying about the issue of funding, which it was cut from national treasury. Now, you can't say issues that are beyond even the province's control is poor management. What we know is that National Treasury has cut the budget of health in this province and national. Now, that shows you that it is evident that there was going to be problems as far as resources are concerned. We can't be blaming nurses for that, because nurses do not be part, or they are not the ones who are procuring. The people who are responsible for procurement in the institution is the CEO, is the corporate services manager. And it is our view that the CEO, if nurses are suspended, the CEO also should be suspended, and the corporate service manager for failing to do their best to provide tools of trade for those nurses.
DENOSA's provincial chairperson, Mzwakhe Seleke, that's where we leave it this morning. Thank you so much for joining me and adding, of course, your input to this conversation. This at the back of Minister Dr. Joe Phaahla, of course, calling what happened at the Mahikeng Hospital, newborn babies being placed in cardboard boxes, as unacceptable, slamming the actions of the hospital.